Hi everyone, I'm Michael. This is a review for Sammy Keyes and the Hotel Thief. It's the first book in the Sammy Keyes series. So, I'm going to start with just going completely off topic and noting that the reviews for this book are really mean towards Nancy Drew. They all sort of slam Nancy. They're like, "Oh, this book is way better than the Nancy Drew series." Even the inside cover, we've got some quotes here. "Move over, Nancy Drew," from Girls Life, and from Publishers Weekly, "Sammy is no Nancy Drew." Oh man, it's like, ouch, do the Nancy Drew publishers know that she is the go-to reference for old, boring detective books? How many times do they have to reboot Nancy Drew? Because they've rebooted the Nancy Drew series quite a few times, but people still think of these old books. They don't think about any of the reboots where Nancy fights bad guys and uses karate and stuff like that. Nope, nope. And so, in comparison to these old Nancy Drew books, this Sammy Keyes book really does come across as rather fresh and different because, let's see, what did Publishers Weekly say? She's smart-mouthed and hard-hitting. Literally hard-hitting. She punches someone in the nose. And that was actually pretty exciting. There were some complaints about that. They're like, whoa, this book's a little violent for kids. I think, as a mystery lover, my complaint would be more along the lines, it's like, well, that had nothing to do with the mystery. So this book is really more like, say, less mystery focused, and it's more like a very exciting week in the life of Sammy Keyes, because we have a lot of stuff that happens at school, and that's not really directly related to the mystery. But you know what? I don't care. That was really interesting. I like the stuff with her at school. So she's starting 7th grade for the first time. I believe Sammy's 13 years old. And just this really mean girl with just giant ears. She's got like 5 earrings in each ear. Heather, and she's really mean, and they don't get along. And what the big scene is that Heather takes a pin and pokes Sammy in the butt, and then Sammy turns around and just bashes her in the face, punches her in the face, breaking her nose. Sammy gets suspended for school. Suspended for 1 day. Suspended from school for 1 day. And then, yeah, it was super exciting and dramatic, and that would make me say, Nancy Drew isn't my go-to reference for this book. I would go with Harriet the Spy. That feels more along the lines of Harriet the Spy. Like, I would say this book feels more like a more grown-up version of Harriet the Spy. That's just my personal taste. I would not say, oh, this is a more mature Nancy Drew. It's like, no, this is a more mature Harriet the Spy. And that works better because Nancy Drew is like 18, 16. 16 in this book, 18 in this book. It changes from book to book. So, but whereas Harriet the Spy is, a littler kid. So that this feels more like in line with what you'd see when Harriet the Spy grows up, as opposed to in line with how Nancy Drew acted when she was in middle school. Gotta stop complaining about Nancy Drew in my Sammy Keyes. To tell you what, I'll put my Sammy Keyes book right here. How's that? Don't fall down, don't fall down. Okay. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and we kind of go back to that when Sammy, because Sammy's suspended from school, she gets to spend a day investigating, so that's kind of cool. And then the next day she sort of goes back, and Heather's got this really huge thing on her nose. She's raising money for the Heal Heather Fund. Actually, her best friend is doing it, but her best friend is totally doing that with her knowledge and consent. And making a big deal about how, oh no, my nose is broken, I'm gonna be all bandaged for a week. And it's all fake. Yeah, it's fake. Sammy calls her doctor. She calls the doctor, and the doctor's like, what? It was just a minor nosebleed. What's the big deal? And so Sammy has the doctor call the vice principal, and the vice principal is furious, and he makes this he's furious because the doctor just chewed him out for an hour, and so he goes to the lunchroom and basically makes a public scene with Heather, insisting she takes off those fake bandages right now. And Heather gets mad. She realizes Sammy's behind it, so she tries to punch Sammy, but unlike Sammy, she's never punched anyone before, so Sammy's able to duck, and Heather punches the vice principal. Oh man, this would be such like a dramatic scene. It's also kind of funny too. I shouldn't laugh. I know it's but that would be a comedic slapstick scene of, somebody accidentally punching the vice principal. So yeah, I kind of like that story with Sammy going up against the mean girl, and kind of interested to see as the series continues. I've been asked to read all the books in the series, so as the series continues, I kind of want to see what's going on with Sammy and the mean girls. There's also like this cute guy, and clearly, he's not important to the story at all, but he will be important in later books. That's the sense I get. And that sort of sense I get with this Mean Girl storyline too, is that it's not fully resolved and it's still going. I kind of like how Sammy talks about school too, just kind of the casual way she talks about, just like, oh man, my math professor's really in love with the letter X. He's dancing around the classroom with the letter X, and all the equipment for showing videos and stuff is broken and terrible. My stepdaughter is now in 8th grade, so she is in middle school. She's not in 7th grade anymore. But it's realistic. That's definitely realistic. So there's 7th graders that act like that are mean and sarcastic. So it does have a big level of truth. As opposed to, say, like some of these Nancy Drew books where she's just the perfect person and never does anything wrong. Yeah. So let me get to the actual mystery story. You guys want to hear about the mystery, right? This is supposed to be a mystery. And like I said, one of the complaints could be that like over a third of the book has nothing really directly related to the mystery, but it's still interesting, and I still like that. So, is a complaint, but I don't think it's a really valid complaint in this case, because it was still an interesting book, and I'm fine with that. If your book has an interesting subplot, which is not mystery related, that's fine. There's like one of these Nancy Drew books, I forget which one, where they just ignore the mystery for like 3 chapters because she's throwing a party, and it was super interesting, so I didn't care. So, the mystery is sort of like, the movie Rear Window, but, Harriet the Spy is what I wanted to say, where she's spying on somebody with binoculars, and she sees a hotel thief. Somebody's robbing a seedy hotel, which is down the street. And Sammy, she waves at the thief when the thief sees her, which is so funny and great, and they make a lot of jokes about it. And so Sammy tries not to get involved, but she sees the police officers there, and the one officer doesn't like her. She had a run-in with him before. I'm totally forgetting what their previous run-in was about, but it wasn't good, so, she doesn't really want to deal with Officer Borsch. He doesn't like her very much. He seems to think that, she's making things up for attention, and then he sort of gets pulled unwillingly into the drama with where she lives, because Sammy lives with her grandma, and she's not supposed to live with her grandma. Grandma lives in like a seniors only home, so the really mean lady who lives just down the hallway, Mrs. Grayworth, whatever her name is, she's really mean, and she's basically has nothing else to do but get involved in everybody else's business. And so she tries to call the police on Grandma. It's like, her stepdaughter, not stepdaughter, her granddaughter is staying here. This is a seniors only place. You can't have your granddaughter living here. I'm calling the police. And the culprit actually writes her a threatening message saying, keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you. Threatening message along those lines. Accidentally delivers it to the mean woman's apartment. And so the mean woman just goes into a huge hissy fit. And that also kind of ties in with Sammy having to be gone from home being suspended from school for a day. She has to avoid her house for a day. She has to stay away from Grandma's because we want to convince the mean woman we want to convince the mean woman that Sammy doesn't live there, when Sammy really does live there. There's only a brief scene referencing Sammy's mother, who will appear in later books, but Sammy's mother is gone doing something else. She basically dumped her child with Grandma, That's the story. We'll get more on that in later books. Sammy goes around the neighborhood. There is a lot of Sammy going around the neighborhood. Spends a lot of time with her best friend Marissa, who is cool. I like Marissa. Wasn't a big fan of Marissa's younger brother, who was he basically exists to be made fun of in this particular book. Like Marissa's just always getting mad at him because he eats too much candy, and that's about it. That's his story. Sammy does meet a fair amount of suspects. Like we've got the one shop owner who is losing money on the commodities market, if you can believe that. Um, and there's something going on with him and his dad, right? His dad owns the store, and so that's why he's kind of feeling confident about spending money he doesn't have because he knows he's got a secure job, but he's really getting in trouble. So maybe stealing things will be a good way. The hotel thief, by the way, stole $4,000 from, I believe her name is Gina, I think, or is it Nina? And she doubles as a psychic, and that was kind of interesting because she makes friends with Sammy, and Sammy goes to visit her at her work, and Sammy actually goes and visits her apartment, and there she finds a clue. Somebody's doing the same trick that she does to break in and out of Grandma's apartment, which is put a small piece of paper in the door jamb. That way you can come in and leave through the fire escape. And the piece of paper there actually says, like, Heavenly Hotel, room 413, or whatever the room number was. So Sammy tries giving this information to Officer Borsch. Officer Borsch just thinks she's making it up and thinks it's a lie. And at the very end, when Sammy's justified, the other officer gets really mad at Officer Borsch for ignoring this important information. Because, I read that. I was mad. I was offended for Sammy's sake that the officer was just ignoring her. Like she says, you could do a handwriting test. And he could. He could easily ask Sammy to just write out the exact same thing. Oh, clearly her handwriting doesn't match the culprit's. There you go. Would have taken 5 seconds. So yeah. But it is interesting, Sammy's relationship with the officer. Because like I said, the officer doesn't like her, and she's kind of worried he'll remember her from something that happened in the past. And also, she's not supposed to be living with her grandmother too, so she kind of want to keeps it hidden. So she kind of like keeps him at arm's length. So I thought that was an interesting dynamic there. Bunch of other people around the neighborhood they visit. Like there's this friendly old guy, and he's got this strange person who is a new boarder. And then there's Oscar. He's the blind man who goes around selling double dynamos. Oh man. So the book makes a big deal about these ice creams. They are delicious. It's like 2 full scoops of ice cream in a pack, which is amazing because if you just buy like individual things of ice cream, they don't give you 2 full scoops. They give you like these tiny fudgesicle bars. And yeah, but yeah, so it's like completely dunked in chocolate too. And here's the part I don't like though. It's coated in peanuts. I'm like, oh man, really? Because I feel like 2 scoops of ice cream, and they're different flavors too, so that's pretty nice. 2 scoops of ice cream completely coated in chocolate sounds like a great treat. But then completely coat that in peanuts. That's like, if I wanted to eat a bowl of peanuts, I would eat a bowl of peanuts, okay? Let me see. I think they've got other characters who will be important in later books. Like it says one of the books is the Sisters of Mercy. And there's kind of a deal at the church towards the end of the book. That's where she manages to figure out who the culprit is. And other people at the mall, right? There's the friendly guy at the mall who likes her. And yeah, Sammy figures out how she's going to capture the culprit and prove who the culprit is, but first she needs money, so she goes to her friend Marissa asking for money. But mean Heather is there, and she's like, oh, looks like Sammy only likes you for your money. And Marissa's sad and runs away crying, and Heather tries to steal the money. And so Sammy hunts her down and just beats her up on the escalator, which was kind of violent. I didn't like that as much as the earlier fight scene with Sammy. Maybe because, now she's just tackling her in public. And the book makes sure there are a bunch of people watching while Sammy just goes to town on Heather. So, yeah. That was one scene. I wouldn't have done that if I was the one writing this book. Anyway, the very clever how the clues kind of come together at the end. I thought it was very well done, where Sammy realizes the culprit is actually Oscar, who is not blind. The blind man is not blind. She realized that when she realized, okay, she saw him wiping his glasses, cleaning his glasses, and you wouldn't do that if you're actually blind. He was also pretending to be deaf as well, that he has a hearing problem. I forget the other clue, but that was sort of the big one. Also, he's the one who's always selling the ice cream, so he was able to write the notes on those ice cream papers. Yeah. So, I feel like I'm rambling a bit at this point, but it was really good how the clues came together. Sammy just found the 2 to 3 clues. They were very subtly written. Like, I did not pick up on that. I had no idea who the culprit would be, and I thought they came together really well. Another thing I think I forgot to mention is that Sammy pretends to be living at her friend's house, Marissa's house. So that was interesting too, because Marissa also has problems with her parents. Her parents are basically never around. At one point, Marissa's crying because her parents really don't like her and never hang out with her, and that's something she and Sammy have in common. I thought that was kind of deep. Interesting how, you can do, like, literary analysis and compare and contrast the way that the two main characters relate to their parents. Because Sammy does have a brief conversation with her mom. It's sort of one-sided. We don't get to hear anything about her mom says. Anyway, so that's Sammy Keyes and the Hotel Thief. I thought it was a good mystery. I thought it was a good story. Some of the weaker points were not weak points in my mind. Like I said, all the stuff with her at school and the stuff at her wandering around town is still interesting. Her meeting people and dealing with people. I thought that all was still interesting, even though, it's a mystery. As being a hardcore mystery, it probably should have been a bit more focused on the mystery. It was clearly just her going around talking to people as opposed to her going around town looking for suspects and questioning suspects. Now, a lot of those people were suspects, but it was not her primary objective. It was more like, she's bored, she needs something to do today because she's not at school. But, good book! Very strong start to the series. I can see why the series, I can see why it was so good. It did win an award. I can see why people liked it and wanted more, and it ended up being a long series. I don't know how many books there are. There are, looks like at least 20, maybe 30 books in the series. So, it's kind of a lot. Yeah, and it works just fine as middle school literature. So, I'll be nice, because this is the first book in the series, and it was a big award-winning book. I don't know if any of the other books in the series won fancy awards. So I will give this like a 9 out of 10. Very, very good book. All right. Thanks for watching my kind of rambling review. Bye.